When you visit a website and see a message that says, "This site uses cookies," it might sound oddly domestic for something happening inside a computer. After all, cookies belong in kitchens, not in code. Yet this tiny word has become one of the most common terms on the internet. Billions accept or reject cookie notices daily without thinking about the name, yet cookie in computing has a fascinating origin. So why do we call it a cookie? Let's find out right here on History of Simple Things. To understand why websites call them cookies, we need to go back to the early days of computer programming. Long before the modern web existed, programmers were already using the word cookie in a playful technical sense. In the 1970s and 1980s, programmers called small pieces of data that were sent out and returned unchanged magic cookies. A program gave you a small bit of information, which you later returned to prove you received it. The name Magic Cookie was partly inspired by fortune cookies, the small crisp desserts often served in Chinese restaurants in the United States. Inside each fortune cookie is a slip of paper containing a message. In the computing analogy, the cookie contained a piece of information passed along in a similar way. Programmers loved quirky metaphors, and terms like spam, demon, and cookie became shorthand for technical ideas. The concept of cookies became especially important with the birth of the modern web in the early 1990s. At that time, websites had a major limitation. They had no memory. Each time your browser requested a web page, the server treated it as a completely new interaction. Imagine a store where the cashier forgets you every few seconds. You couldn't stay logged in, keep a cart, or personalize your experience. This problem was solved in 1994 by a programmer named Lou Montulli, who worked for the pioneering internet company Netscape Communications. Montulli developed a system that allowed websites to store small bits of information on a user's computer. These small files stored details like login sessions, preferences, or shopping cart items. When you returned, the browser sent the data back, allowing the website to recognize you. Montulli called these pieces of stored information cookies, drawing from the older programming concept of the magic cookie. The name stuck because it was short, memorable, and already familiar among programmers. Instead of inventing a technical phrase like persistent client data tokens, the informal term cookie made the concept easier to discuss and understand. Technically speaking, a web cookie is simply a small text file stored in your browser. It usually contains a unique identifier along with some basic data related to your activity on a website. When you revisit the site, your browser sends the cookie back to the server, allowing it to recognize you. This process happens silently and quickly, often in a fraction of a second. Cookies power many conveniences of the modern internet. They keep you logged in, remember preferences and settings, and sometimes store items in your shopping cart. However, not all cookies are the same. First-party cookies are created by the website you visit to improve your experience, while third-party cookies are placed by external companies, often advertisers, to track browsing activity across multiple sites for targeted ads. This is where cookies became controversial. As online advertising grew in the late 1990s and early 2000s, companies realized that cookies could be used to track people across the internet. If several websites use the same advertising network, that network could follow a user's browsing behavior through cookies placed on each site. Over time, this raised concerns about privacy and data collection. Governments eventually stepped in with regulations requiring websites to disclose their use of cookies. That is why many websites today display banners asking users to accept or manage cookies before continuing. These notices are especially common because of privacy laws like the General Data Protection Regulation, which requires clear consent for many types of data tracking. Despite the privacy debates, cookies themselves are actually quite limited in what they can do. They cannot run programs, access files on your computer, or infect your system with viruses. At their core, they are simply small pieces of text data. The real concern usually lies not in the cookie itself, but in how the information stored in it is used by companies. Interestingly, the playful naming tradition in computing never disappeared. Many internet technologies still use everyday metaphors to describe technical processes. For example, breadcrumbs describe navigation paths on websites, firewalls protect networks, and cloud computing refers to remote data storage. The word cookie continues the tradition of making complex technology easier and more fun to discuss. Today, web cookies are such a standard part of the internet that most people barely notice them. They quietly track sessions, preferences, and interactions, keeping websites personalized and functional. Yet their humble name is a reminder of the web's quirky origins, from playful magic cookies in early programming to the digital tokens that help websites recognize and remember users. So while a web cookie may not be something you can eat, the idea behind the name still carries the same spirit. A small package containing a message, passed along and returned when needed. And just like the slip of paper inside a fortune cookie, that little piece of information can tell a website more than you might expect. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.